Hello, this is Mark Wherewith. I wanted to debunk 5 myths about electric vehicles based on my 12 years, actually now closer to 13 years of driving electric vehicles almost exclusively, um, back and forth to work, on long trips, including trips to Colorado from Illinois, trips to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. I've gone as far as probably 1,200 miles in one direction with absolutely no problems. I've never been stranded, never had um, any breakdowns. I've got about 50,000 miles on my 2022 Kia EV6. What you're seeing here in this picture is a Kia EV6. It's actually one of my favorite cars. I love it in the snow. I've got all-wheel drive. I've got some Michelin Cross Climate 2s, so I can go through just about any kind of weather. I feel very safe in it. I feel very comfortable in it. It's got heated seats. It's got heated steering wheel. Um, it works extremely well in all weathers and in all climates and in all situations. So I've been very happy. But I want to get through 5 myths that I think I've been hearing a lot about. People who like to, diss the electric vehicle. And, for what it's worth, electric vehicles have become very popular in Europe, South America, Central America, almost all of Asia, China. Places like Norway have nearly 95% penetration, meaning 95% of all new vehicles are electric. And we're talking about a very cold climate. So any concerns about the cold, I think, can be largely set aside with the caveat that you do lose range. And I will make that caveat. So, and I'm not trying to give you a one-sided story here, but you do lose range. It could be 30%. So just keep that in mind as we go through the presentation, right? So what are the 5 myths? Battery range is not sufficient for everyday use. Charging costs are too high. Can't use an EV on a long trip. EVs don't last past 100,000 miles. And of course, EVs are too expensive, right? So let's get to it. Range, right? Most modern EVs today are sold with over 200 miles of range and can go as high as 350 or 400 miles of range. Even a Chevy Bolt, which is one of the lowest cost electric vehicles, whether it's an older version or the newer version, can go at least 250 miles. So um, the average daily commute is roughly 15 miles. And even if you double it and say, okay, with errands and stuff, you need to go 30 miles, you're basically talking about not having to recharge your vehicle for 5 days. Now, most people who have an electric vehicle have some way of charging it at home, either 110 volts or 240, one way or the other, they've got some form of charging at home. If you cannot charge at home, I actually don't recommend you buying an electric car because the advantage of being able to charge while you're having dinner, while you're sleeping, while you're getting ready for work in the morning, if you're charging in the background like you charge your phone, then it makes it a very, very convenient and a very pleasant experience. If you have to drive to a public charging station every time you need to charge, um, and that's what because you live in an apartment maybe, or you live and you park on the street, or et cetera. You don't have a garage that has power. Whatever the reason, frankly, I would not recommend an EV. I would say, if you can charge at home and ideally charge at work too, then you got the best experience of all, right? If your EV or if your daily commute is more than 100 miles round trip and you can't charge at work, then an EV might not make sense for you because you will have degraded range and you might have range anxiety. You don't want to get home with a very low state of charge on your battery, right? Um, Again, if you want the best experience, then I would recommend charging both at home and I have at least have the option to charge at work, right? I have the option to charge at work. I rarely do, frankly, because my commute is about 40 miles and I don't need to charge at work. I can charge at home when I get home. In terms of costs, everyone's worried about costs, right? So especially these days with, increasing gasoline prices, what does it cost to charge an electric vehicle? Well, I picked the top 10 major metros in the United States, from New York all the way down to Boston. I personally live in the Chicago area, so I'm paying about 14 cents per kilowatt hour. And actually, frankly, the base rate is actually lower than that, but let's just go with 14 cents. To go to 50 kilowatt hours is enough to generally drive about 200 miles. Okay. Um, that 200 miles would cost about $7 of electricity. All right. In Chicago. In New York, it might be $9. In Boston, it might be 15. The cheapest apparently is DC at $5.50. Gasoline at $4 a gallon will cost you on average with a 20 mile per gallon car about 20 cents per mile. So if you can get 40 miles per gallon, then perhaps you're down to 10 cents per mile, right? Something like that, right? Um, and to go 200 miles, even at 10 cents per mile, is $20. So you can see that, um, you know, compared to EVs, right? Gasoline is anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 times more expensive when you're charging at home. Okay. When you're charging on the road with public charging, you will wind up paying about the same as gasoline. That's the way they've priced it. When I'm charging on the road, I always feel like I'm getting ripped off. I always try to charge at home before I go on the road. When I go on a long trip, I try to make sure that I'm minimizing my charging on the road. If I get home with 10% state of charge, that's fine. I'd much rather charge at home than get ripped off on the road. Long trips. I've taken, like I said, long trips to Michigan, to Minnesota, from Chicago to Boulder, Colorado. That was a very long trip, about 1,000 miles, right? Electrify America has high-speed charging, as you can see on the right. That's the blue. All these blue dots are high-speed, 200, maybe 350 kilowatt hour or kilowatt charging rates, which is very fast. I mean, a typical charging session should be under 30 minutes, sometimes under 20 minutes to charge up your car, okay? Just enough time to go in, go to the bathroom and grab a hot dog or maybe a drink, and then get back to your car. The left-hand side is Tesla. And then once upon a time, Tesla chargers only worked on Tesla vehicles. That's not true anymore. Tesla chargers work on virtually all electric vehicles now. With adapters, you can charge any car on a Tesla supercharger. So between the left-hand network and the right-hand network, unless you live in North Dakota or Montana or Wyoming, I think you'll find that there's sufficient public charging almost anywhere you want to go, from east to west and north to south. There's a tremendous amount in California. There's a tremendous amount in Florida. And there's a decent amount between those two states that you can easily get from California to Florida in your electric vehicle. So I don't see that there's that big of a problem. I think, frankly, the problem is people don't know that they exist. And the way you get to them is through an app on your phone. So you're not going to see a big billboard that says, charge your car here. You're going to go to an app, and the app will direct you directly to a charging station that's normally behind a Walmart, behind a Sam's Club, et cetera, et cetera. Places like that, that frankly, most people don't pay that much attention to. So that's probably why you don't know that they're out there, but they are out there. In terms of price and longevity, right? I decided to just simply ask ChatGPT how many used electric vehicles that have more than 100,000 miles, right? 100,000 miles are for sale, and where they're located and what's their price, right? So if you're interested in the Tesla Model 3 long range, which is the more expensive version, right? Bigger battery. They've got mileage up, close to 150,000 miles on those cars, right? And they're priced between $12,000 and $18,000. So you can get a used EV for under $20,000, right? In fact, perhaps even under 15,000. Model 3 rear wheel drive, that's the cheaper version. It probably has the smaller battery. It only has two-wheel drive. And the prices are a little bit lower, as you can see. And the reason these are so prevalent is because they're being used as Ubers and Lyfts. And I also believe that they're used in the used car fleet of companies like Hertz. So Hertz is dumping a whole bunch of these. I would wait until maybe, this is now March, I would say maybe June of 26, when I'm told there's going to be a large number of lease vehicles coming off of lease and being available at a low cost. Some additional low-cost vehicles. The Chevy Bolt is one of my favorites. Again, fleet vehicles, delivery vehicles, mileage up to 130,000 miles, used for under $13,000. In fact, as low as $8,000. So Brand new, this vehicle might have been 25 to $35,000, somewhere in that range. And yes, they are coming back for 2027, I believe. So GM is going to start building them again. Um, Great vehicles, not huge, very small, but even somebody like me, 6'4", I can fit in these cars pretty easily. And not the best car for a long drive, simply because the seats aren't that comfortable. But that's my perception. Other people, like my wife, she says the seats are fine for her. So, um, Kia has been in the EV business for a long time, almost as long as Tesla, right? They have newer EVs that are, 2019 and above, 115,000 miles of usage, and somewhere under $20,000 is a very achievable price for a Kia Niro EV. I've driven these, I've rented these when I'm on vacation. They're quite comfortable. They're like small SUVs. I would call this either, no, maybe more like a mid-size SUV. Fits my purposes and might fit yours as well, right? One last motivation for you, and that motivation is gasoline. And this is, again, mid-March 2026. Gasoline prices continue to rise. 27% in 6 weeks for gasoline, 32% rise in 6 weeks for diesel. This is a tragedy. I hope it reverses. I hope it stops. I hope it somehow remedies itself. The world right now seems to have some sort of oil war going on, centered around Iran and the Gulf states. I don't know when it'll resolve, if it will resolve, and where gasoline prices will level off. Projections could be as high as $5 or $6 a gallon on average across the country. If you're in California, you're already there. So you already know what I'm talking about. As gasoline prices go up, electricity prices, when they're often run not off of oil, right? But electricity is often run by nuclear. In some cases, we have solar. In many cases, we have wind. Um, and these are all more or less sustainable sources of energy for the grid and for you to drive around with much more stable pricing than the price of oil. Oil for me has been a source of real tension, a real source of concern ever since the 70s, when we had the oil crisis of the mid 70s going into the 80s. I learned then to get off of oil as much as I can. I've even used flexible fuel, which is ethanol. I've used electricity for the last 13, 14 years. I've been a hybrid driver for a long time, getting 40 miles per gallon on a hybrid, right? So this is my statement to you, right? Seriously consider the EV. I think you'll find the EV to be perhaps the solution for you to get off of gas and to save the money. I didn't even talk about repair costs. I didn't even talk about maintenance costs. I mean, those are dramatically lower. No oil to change, no engine oil, no air filters, no spark plugs, no emissions system, no emissions testing on your car. There are no emissions. This is an emissions-free vehicle. So EVs have a lot of advantages besides fuel costs and besides the initial cost. And I hope seriously you consider them. Thank you.